What a shame.
Shame.
That my
Che lastima.
Thanks.
all right, now it's crooked.
This is where he talks about the piece of wood in the eye.
No, it's not. It's not. Stop stumbling and cause others to stumble. This is the next part of Matthew, of course. We're in Matthew chapter 12. But Matthew chapter 12, he is actually going into the church age. He's actually going into instructions on how to run a church, how to behave in a church, how to discipline within the church. And that's extremely important for us to understand, because what did Jesus just go over 2 weeks ago? Last week we took a little caveat and talked about how to love one another. But now we're going to get back into Matthew chapter 18, and it's it should be 18, not 12.
That's 18?
Yeah, it's
okay.
Chapter 18, not 12. That's a typo. I apologize. And we will be going over the idea of offense and how to deal with stumbling blocks and people who cause division within the church. And 2 weeks ago, when we started Matthew chapter 18, we came across this whole idea. If you look at chapter 18, verse 1, where they were arguing, who's going to be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And Jesus had to kind of like lay the smackdown on them and say, hey, it's not about who's the greatest. The least here on earth will have rewards in heaven. The more you're obedient here, the more status and the more rewards you will have there. So it's all about being obedient and being humble in this life. And the key word and the key phrase that we need to see in the first four verses of Matthew chapter 18 here is in verse 4, because this is the theme that Jesus is going to carry over into verses 6 through 10. He says, therefore, whoever humbles himself as a little child of heaven. So it's to have that childlike faith. In other words, it's to be so dependent upon God that you know that He is going to take care of you through thick and thin. Just like my kids have no worries about where their next meal is going to come from. God expects us to have the same attitude. He expects us to have the attitude of not worrying about your basic necessities, just as a human child would not worry about their basic necessities with their earthly child. So that is the humility that He's looking at. That is what's going on. But what He is going to be going through here is not causing these little children to stumble. In other words, not causing other believers, other children of God. And Paul picks up this in 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 9 here. But beware lest somehow this liberty of yours become a stumbling block to those who are weak. So in other words, there is such thing as stumbling blocks. In this context, Paul's talking about, hey, the freedoms that you have in Jesus, alcoholic. All right? Because drinking in and of itself isn't sin. It's drunkenness that's a sin. But if your liberty to drink causes an ex-alcoholic to drink and get drunk, then you are responsible for their fall. You place a stumbling block before them. And that's one of the things that that Paul was talking about here. Paul's big example in this verse would have been the meat sacrificed to idols, of course, because there in Corinth, whenever you went to the meat market, it was hard. You'd be hard pressed not to find a piece of meat that was not sacrificed to some demonic idol somewhere. So people would eat that meat thinking, man, am I participating in that pagan religion? And they'd have convictions against it. And Paul was like, no, the idol's nothing. You can eat that meat. But if there's someone there who don't think you can, don't eat meat in front of them for their conscience sake. Principle. It is loving other people, putting their convictions, putting their needs above your own, and just not causing people to sin, not causing people to violate their conscience. It's a big thing, If Like with dozens of women running around in string bikinis. I don't want to look at that. It would cause me to stumble. It would cause me to lust. I don't want to look at that. That's a problem that I have, and I guard myself against it. That's a rule I put in my own life to shield my eyes and my heart against lust. Other men might not have that problem. I do. So that's a stumbling block that and I expect other people not to violate that. You can go to the beach, don't expect me to. It's that type of thing. So that's kind of what he's talking about here. And that's what Jesus is going to get into in Matthew chapter 18, is these acts of stumbling blocks and not placing stumbling block, okay? So as we read through, let's look at the first one. Being a stumbling block to others brings judgment. So that's in verse 6 here. So verse 6 says, but whoever causes one of these little ones to believe in me to sin, it would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck than he was drowned in the depth of the sea. So in other words, if you cause another person to stumble into sin, he said, and you're not saved, of course, because remember the context, if you're saved, all you got to do is confess and repent and it's gone. But the idea is, as an unsaved person, this is how much emphasis God places on causing other people to sin. It'd be better for that person to have a millstone, which was, in the ancient Near East, the millstone, you had a bottom round stone and a top round stone that would set perpendicular to it like this, and they would grind wheat between those two stones. It would be a millstone. And that top millstone could have weighed a ton. And he said, if you cause someone else to stumble, it's better if you get that 2,000-pound millstone wrapped around your neck and throw you into the... It'd be better for you to go through that than the judgment that you would have to go through for the sin. But look at what he says here. If he causes one of these little ones, and the context would be the little children, put them on his knee as he said it. So there is a double meaning here. Not just little believers, but children as well. If you cause a child to stumble, God takes it that seriously. So he's telling us that be careful. Verse 7, woe to the world because of offenses, for offenses must come, but woe to the man by whom the offense comes. Now, here's the thing. Offense. Some pseudo-liberal Christians out there would say, see, we can't offend anybody. We got to watch our tongue and make sure we're all politically correct and not say anything that will offend anyone. Now, look at the context here. What does Jesus mean by offense? The offense there is causing someone to sin. It's saying or doing something that causes someone to stumble into sin. As we said before, sometimes the truth offends. The cross is very offending. The cross is extremely offending. Rebuke is offending. The truth can be offending. That's not what Jesus is talking about here. He's talking about causing someone to stumble into sin and offending them that way. He says, woe to the man by whom that offense comes. See, so what does that mean to us, guys? What that means to us is in our words and in our actions. It goes back to what I was preaching on last week. There's got to be a predominance of love. Putting the other person above yourself in everything. Making sure that the people around you are taken care of through agape love, and that you do everything in your power, bringing them in. And sometimes that's hard, guys, because what happens if someone offends you wrongfully? Like does something that causes you to get angry or causes you to sin? Do we retaliate? No. Because once again, what did Jesus say? Vengeance is God's. He will. Paul says that in Romans chapter 12 as well. You see, we are supposed to love even our enemies, right? Love our enemies, not put a stumbling block in front of anyone. Period. This is a high, tall order. The type of guy that back in the day, if you would have ticked me off, I'd have been prompted to almost punch you in your face. I wasn't a violent person, and I've never been in a fight really, but boy, I came close a couple of times. I was the type that wouldn't punch someone in the face. I would run my mouth off at them. I would tell them off. And use every single swear word that you could think of to do it. You know? I have to guard myself against that because I can't offend even when I'm offended. See, this stuff is hard. It's extremely hard, and you can't do it consistently if you're. I'd rather resolve this, not to put a stumbling block or a cause to fall in our brother's way. It doesn't matter how they treat you. Doesn't matter how they treat me. You do not put any stumbling block before me. There are people that I know that I mean, this might sound crazy, but I wouldn't even play rock or country music before them because I know that it would cause them to stumble and sin because they have convictions against it. I have no problem with rock and country music. I have no problem with contemporary Christian music. But some Christians do. Some Christians are hymn only. Some people are classical music only. And I don't share that same conviction. But, right? I'm going to put them above myself. Because I'm not going to put a cause for stumbling in their way. Do you see the humility that's involved here, guys? It's not about you. It's not about you. Nothing is about us. It's about everybody else around us. Because if we love one another and we bear one another, you don't have to take care of yourself because everyone else is taking care of you. That's how this is supposed to work. But does it work that way? No, because within every single church in the world, what exists is this little nasty thing that starts with an S. Bless those who spitefully use you. Bless, I say, and not curse. If they use you, bless them and love them anyway. Ouch. That means that, what does that tell me? If you love someone, you're going to get used. You're going to get used. They're going to take advantage of you because that's what people do. See, this is so hard, Oscar. It really is. This is one of the hardest things I've ever done. You'll be judged for it. You know, on Judgment Day, which means for us believers, if we cause a brother to sin on Judgment Day, when we are judged for our good and bad works, that's one of the bad works, and there's going to be some rewards lost there on account of that stupidity that we did. You know, there's going to be a lower status. And we trivialize that, guys. But remember, the status that you get in heaven and the rewards you get in heaven, you're stuck with them forever. It's not a trivial thing. You're stuck in that position. You got to live with it. In heaven, but for illustration's sake, for illustration, that's a status that you could have. Do you really want that? No. No, you have at most, if you're you have at the very most 120 years on this planet. And that's if you are extraordinarily blessed. Because I think that the oldest person that lived in recent history is like 123 or something like that. So if you are extraordinary, realize, oh man, I'm halfway there. You know? And that's starting to hit me a little bit. And I'm like, I don't want to waste it. You know? So that's what's doing. So number one, being a stumbling block to others brings judgment. But number two, failure to rid yourself of the stumbling blocks brings judgment. So look at this. It causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you. Now, Jesus is saying that as what we call this is a hyperbolic. It's a figure of speech. The figure of speech back is a hyperbole. It wasn't meant to be taken literally. And because it was a figure of speech common back then. And a way that you get to feel that it wasn't meant to be taken literally is because the Mosaic law had laws against mutilation, meaning it literally. Because the Mosaic law forbid mutilation. So he's not saying literally chop off your hand and cast it from you. He's saying take drastic measures here. If your foot causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you. In other words, if you go to the bar, if you go to whatever, take whatever precaution needed to not go there. Get rid of the stumbling block. Get rid of it. If it causes you to sin, get rid of it. That's what Jesus is saying. Is better life lame or maimed rather than having 2 hands or 2 feet. Okay? To be cast into everlasting fire. Alright, now also keep in mind here, who is he speaking to here, guys? He's still speaking to Jews who are under the law, who are trying to be saved by law. If you're going to keep the law, this is the extent that you're going to have to go through to do it. He's trying to show the Jews you can't do it. You know, you can't do it. Again, Matthew chapter 5, verse 18 says, I have not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. So, again, Jesus keeps the law on our behalf, so we don't have to worry about this, but he's showing the seriousness of it. Keep it away from sin by getting rid of the stumbling blocks. Verse 9. And if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you. So if there's stuff out there that causes you to sin by looking at it, get rid of whatever it is. I mean, like I said, that could be anything. I mean, if you have Hulu and there's a bunch of shows on there that are inappropriate and cause you to sin, get rid of Hulu, get rid of your internet, get rid of your phone, get an internet filter, do whatever you have to do, get rid of it. Because it's better for you to enter into life with one eye rather than having 2 eyes be casting into hellfire. And that word hellfire there is the Greek word Gehenna, unbelievers. All right, so that is a big thing. Hebrews 12:1. I believe that this is probably Paul who wrote this, but we don't know who wrote Hebrews. But the author of Hebrews says, therefore we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us. And let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. So let us set aside. He's saying, let's set aside. The weight would be these stumbling blocks. The weight would be these things that weigh us down. The weight would be these things that cause us to stumble. And so he says, take the stumbling blocks and the sin and set them aside. The Greek word ensnare was like an animal snare, like a snare that would trap an animal. It's so easily ensnares us. Do you see what he's saying there? The sin easily traps us. It's not something that we have to work at doing. All we have to do is let our guard, or a philosophical thing here. This is a theological battle, Megan. I need you to help me repent and lay this sin aside. Help me do this. Take away my desire to do this. And when I'm tempted, show me your way of escape. Show me what you run with endurance the race that's set before us. In other words, get busy for God. Do something, because idleness will just cause you to sin. Idleness is horrific. It's not in the Bible. There's a close paraphrase of this. This is a paraphrase of what's in the Bible. But but idle hands is the devil's workshop. Proverbs says something very, very similar to that. Those exact words aren't in Scripture, but Proverbs says something similar to that. Because idleness does open you up for all kinds of atrocities, because now your mind is empty and every demonic being can get in there and start getting you to do stuff you ought not to do. I mean, being busy for God is one of the best things you can do to avoid sin. It really, really is. So, Jesus gives us the following warnings about being a stumbling block. Number one, as we said, being a stumbling block to others brings judgment. Number two, failure, the risk also brings judgment. But number three, therefore, we need to stop being a stumbling block. Yeah, I mean, it's really this easy. See how simple Jesus was? He just got right to the point, right? He didn't make this stuff complicated, Gilbert. He didn't make it complicated. Guys, means putting yourself above the other. Put them above you. Don't take heed that you do not despise one of these little ones. And who are the little ones? The little ones are every Christian around you. That's the context. Okay? For I say to you that in heaven their angels always see the face of my Father who is in heaven. And God, what does that mean? They're angels. They're angels. The Greek word there is possessive. They're angels. Is that, because people will dispute this, but is that a proof text for a guardian? What you got to go in there? But the point is their angel protects them, and they see the face of the Father who's in heaven. So what's the implication there? Don't despise these little ones, because God ain't the only one watching you. They have an angel watching you too. And angels are ministering spirits, as we can see here. Wrong verse. I do that a lot. But his chastisement and his judgment. Think of Sodom and Gomorrah. He went down to judge Sodom and Gomorrah. 2 angels. Right? So these are things that God does judge. God does chasten. But He often does it through a proxy. He does proxies from with me, watching me. And that's a true statement that's really happening, and you allow that to change your heart. Or you just turn that into a religious, psychological experience and say, it's a nice little Bible story, God's present with me. You either believe it or you don't. I'm tied up on an altar, getting ready to slit his throat. Hip in his hand, raised up, getting ready to plunge it into his son when God stopped him. That's the point. True faith affects behavior. If you don't, and we haven't fully trusted in it. I'm guilty of that too, guys. We're all guilty of it, because every single time we sin, we're showing that there's a disconnect somewhere. And we're not afraid of his chastisement. Remember, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. What's the fear of the Lord? The fear of the Lord is just this reverence for his authority, for his chastisement, for his majesty, for everything around him. Many times I found myself falling into sin and slipping into one of these sins that so easily ensnare me. I'm like, Lord, I'm so sorry. My faith is weak because I don't fear you. I forget so easily that you're sitting here watching me, and that you're ready to chasten if I have this unrepentant heart too long. That's convicting. Don't do it. I'm guilty of this in one place, and I'll tell you exactly what it is. I think it's funny. My kids hate it. I love to parody songs and change songs and put a poop or a fart theme to them and sing them. I think it's funny. They can't stand it, and they get mad at me, and I find myself provoking my children to wrath because I'm singing this stuff when they don't like it. That's me being a stumbling block. And that's something I've got to stop. I think it's funny. They don't. But that's the point. To them, it's not funny. They rid yourself of your own stumbling blocks that causes you to stumble. Because if you got the things in your life, and that could include people, by the way, if you got people that's constantly offending, what does Titus 3 say? Remove from your midst the device that's fitting right into this. Sometimes the stumbling block could be a person. Got to get rid of them. If they're a toxic person that's constantly ripping you from God, get rid of them. And Paul qualifies that after one or two. Ask for that repentance, saying, Lord, help